yes, that was me clearing my throat during the intro. I don't know. That's embarrassing, I guess, but not as embarrassing as getting bangs and then playing with them for an entire podcast,
which is about to happen.
which is
Right.
about to be the next hour. So for folks that are listening, man, something is up. We'll blame the seasonal allergies, I guess. For those that are listening, you don't get the joy of seeing Blair Milo, who is my guest today, but she cut her hair with bangs, which is something newish, and we started talking a little bit before, and I had to pause her. I had to say, "Hang on, we're losing good content here," because boy, do I have thoughts about lady folk and when they cut their hair. And oh my God, if you didn't play into it when you said, I don't know. It was a thing. And I don't know. Every time on social media, like death, taxes, every time I see someone on social media, they're like, "Oh, I cut my bangs." My first thought is, "Oh, girl, what's going on in life? How's it going? How are things?"
I mean, follow that intuition. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think there was an episode of Emily in Paris when, like, between seasons, like you had the previous season's cliffhanger and then the new season starts and she gets bangs and everybody in the show is just like, "Are you okay?" And finally by the end of that episode, she's like, "I just got bangs. It's fine."
There there is something, I don't know what it is, but it's usually and I'm just painting with a broad brush here. It seems to be more women that do this than men, but it's like whenever there's an event in life that's maybe marked by a new tattoo or a new piercing or a new hair color, but for some reason in the crisis or in the just whole world things going on, bangs.
Yeah. Well, I remember looking it up one time after I had a dream that, like, somebody was cutting my hair and I didn't want my hair cut, um and so I remember feeling like traumatized in this dream that somebody was cutting my hair. And it was one of those like really vivid dreams that then afterwards, it's like, I'm just kind of curious what the whole dream interpreters would say about this thing. And I don't know how much I ascribe to dream interpretations, but I do find it just interesting.
Yeah, it's a good
And
read.
I looked it up, and the interpretation of having your hair cut when and especially um, like by somebody or some kind of an event that feels out of control is a representation, theoretically, according to the stream interpreter, that you feel like your life is outside of your control, like things are happening that um, you can't manage, or, and I shouldn't say manage, but like that are just out of your control.
Right.
And so it'll play itself out in a dream scenario by having your hair cut. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. I can look back to the time in my life that was happening, and I don't now remember exactly what the details were, but I do remember like looking it up, like I said, at that time, and then coming across that interpretation and being like, that does feel kind of right. Like,
I
and so
wonder
oh,
from
sorry.
no, do not be sorry. I was thinking, I wonder from a stylist perspective. Um, I'm a big fan of tattoos. I don't know, I've got close to 30 of them now. And when I go in, some of them are fun and goofy. Other ones you could tell are serious and have some meaning. And you could tell the artist is like, oh, okay, let's unpack the feelings that go with this thing. I
Yeah.
wonder if when you go to a stylist and you go in there and you sit down and you go, I'm thinking bangs. I wonder if they go, oh, this is going to be a therapy session, not so much a haircut session. I wonder if that's what they think.
I mean, I would imagine to some sort of an extent, yes. And I mean, when I decided to do it recently, I was chatting with my stylist about it. And I was like, well, and I have a lovely gal that I get to connect with here in the UK, and then have had a longtime stylist in the US. And I was telling the gal here in the UK that my conversations with my stylist in the US have been along the lines of like me thinking that I want to get bangs, and then my friend Heather, who is my stylist in LaPorte, will be like, "Well, but do you really want to do that?"
Yeah.
And
Do you want to do that, or do you just need some chocolate?
right. And at one point, Heather was like, "Well, I mean, I guess we are at the age where we're considering bangs or Botox." And
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So long as something's covering the forehead, we're okay.
and like bangs feel like the manageable option because that it's not forever, and I feel like in the broader theme of if hair changes are indicative of things going on in your life, like it's low end of the
It
spectrum.
is. It's low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
And it is. It's probably it's above shame eating Oreos at 3 in the morning, but also below getting even getting your hair colored or a tattoo or some other
right,
quasi permanent thing.
right. And then and you'll the last thing, and we can move on to other topics, but
No, no, no. This is Hair Hour, brought to you in part by Pantene.
yeah, that's right. As I'm still trying to figure out what to do with them, because as always happens coming out of a hair appointment, like you look great that day, and then it's like I can't recreate this whole situation. And so now, as I've like tried to manage the bangs, at one point I tried curling them, and then it looked like I'd time traveled to 1991, and I was like, I'm gonna need some Aquanet to be able
Yes.
to handle this situation.
Well, like
How
I
do I
said,
tame these?
like I said in the beginning, for folks who are listening, if you occasionally hear me go into the microphone, it's just me subconsciously attempting to
To move the bang out
to
of my
move
eye.
the bangs around somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
do something, make something happen.
well, I do appreciate you taking time uh, to phone in all the way from the UK. I do have to say, it just occurred to me when you said, my stylist in the UK. I thought, oh, this modest podcast has gone international, but I have to say, you're not my first international call. I've had
Ooh, no.
a Canadian
Oh,
on here already,
okay.
so but from across the globe in an entirely different time zone. Um, that's exciting. Um, I
Keep
have,
in the Anglican.
yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. We'll keep it with that. Um, so one of the issues that I had when I thought, well, I always knew when I started this that I wanted Blair on because we met a handful of years ago,
Mhm.
but we've had a friendship that's really kind of gone off in a bunch of different areas, a bunch of different interests. And I think, you know, you have um, you have a really interesting story, meaning, um, your service to the country, and then your not only in the military, but then as an elected official. Some of your work down in Indianapolis, then some of your work at the Institute. Now you're in the UK doing things. And I thought, I don't know that I have 17 hours to just unpack everything that is Blair Milo that brought you to today. So I thought we'd really just kind of talk about the two things really.
Okay.
I how we got to know each other because I
Mhm.
I think that that's part of what the podcast is, just my life and how it intersected with other people's lives. And but I'm really interested in what you're doing now because anytime somebody makes a decision to make a big move from long hair to bangs or from Indiana to the UK, I think it's worthy of a conversation of what is driving that person either to something or away from something, or what's the
Mhm.
motivations behind that. So I'll get started. You'll forgive me. It's probably seared into your mind more than mine in terms of date. Was it 2022 that we?
Well, yes.
Yes. I
Fun.
I know it's so we're both um in politics to some varying degree. I find a lot of my memories are tied to election seasons.
Sure.
And it's like, oh, did I do this in a midterm year? Did I do this in a presidential election year? And
Yeah.
it's things that really don't have anything to do with politics. It's
Mhm.
just
Sure.
that's how my life runs. Um, I was always really impressed by your resume, your story, what got you um, uh, to run for the Republican nomination for the Congressional District 1.
Hmm.
And I thought, that's a person I'd like to know. And so, if you could give me just a
Seems
brief.
crazy. Oh, here. Oh,
Yeah, aw. That's someone that I need to. Yeah, no.
something seems wrong with her.
Yeah. That I either need to get to know her or watch that Lifetime special.
Right.
So you,
That's the kindest thing anybody's said about my life.
yeah. Nope. Not gonna say it. Not gonna say it. So you join up with the Navy
Hmm.
after, and I don't even know the sequence of events. Was this after high school or college that you joined up?
High school, that I was blessed to have. Well, I didn't start out this way, but within my first year at Purdue University, I was able to pick up a scholarship for ROTC. And so I had wanted to serve, and so that had prompted me to explore what the different types of commissioning sources would be. I thought I was going to go to the Naval Academy. I was honored to have a nomination, didn't get an appointment. And that became the first of many scenarios in life where I discovered that God had a bigger plan for me than I did. And ended up at Purdue. And so I had the chance to kind of like walk on to the ROTC program at Purdue. And within the first few days, discovering what that opportunity would be, the friends that I was making, just the entire environment became such a blessing that I was just sort of like, well, this is this is way better than what I thought I was going to go do at the Naval Academy. And so, yeah, I did about 3 years of ROTC at Purdue before being commissioned into the Navy.
What So I've always said with whether it's with our armed forces or even the uh, you know adjacent police work or fireworks, something where you are uh, typically at a young age, you make this commitment that this is going to be my path. And I've always admired folks that were willing to take that step, because for some reason it was something that I had always admired, but from a distance. Um, I don't know what steps would um, occur in my life to say I'm courageous enough to sign up for this, because I estimate that I'm not, and so I never did. Um, I don't know why. I think I probably have, you know, a better respect for it now than I did, at 18, 19, when you think about signing up for these things. But I
Mhm.
just don't know that I could. Was it, was it intimidating for you, or was it always a drive like, no, this is what I want to do. I want to go, be the Marines Uber. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is that? I tease knowing absolutely nothing about any of it. I have a few friends that were in the Navy, and I like to use that, and they all get a kick out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's fair in many ways. We do a couple other things that the Marines don't do, like launch Tomahawk missiles and operate aircraft carriers, and
Don't eat crayons. Oh
we do eat crayons. We grunt a lot less,
no.
but I mean, we just that's a scale. I didn't say that we don't grunt,
Grunt. It's just, yeah.
but I mean, I think that there was and this is I guess a constant theme that maybe is a blessing in many ways of that. I just don't think about it that much of the like of what may occur, and maybe that was a consequence of my age or just not knowing. I didn't come from a military family per se. And I just owe a ton of credit, and I'm forever grateful to the wonderful people of the American Legion Auxiliary Hoosier Girls State that was where the seed was planted for me that I wanted to serve because of just what I learned throughout that week, that I'd become kind of a growing government nerd and was fascinated with this idea of how our system of governance works and what it takes to be able to have this kind of a model, and knowing that defense of our country is a key aspect of that. And that really, I think, just came through the week for me of Hoosier Girls State. And it was leaving Girls State that weekend that my mom and I had a conversation as she was driving me back home, that I was like, I think that I'm interested in joining the military. And it's so funny looking back on it, that I'm like, because she says, like, well, what branch are you thinking about? And I'm like, well, I like the water, so maybe the sea.
I'm like a
And
fish,
and
so
it really was like that kind of a decision. And then as time played on, and it was my mom who then said, well, have you considered maybe the military academies? If it's the Navy that you're interested in, then what about the Naval Academy? And it's like, what is this thing that you speak of?
yeah,
And then I started researching some of those pieces, and it just wasn't a factor for me of what the reality of all of that was going to actually be. And then, I mean, over as life played out, there have been some hairy moments, but I mean, I think courage comes in a lot of different forms, and it's not necessarily just signing yourself up knowingly into what can be some dangerous situations, but it's signing yourself up to situations that may just be challenging in a whole host of different ways. I think, politics and public service takes a whole host of courage, and always has. And I think it takes a different type of courage these days, given how the conversation has shifted, and in many ways the level of, sadly, violence that we've seen
yeah.
into political realm. And so I all of which is to say, I think that there's just different factors and different roles that people are called into. And as I look back over the adventure that God has had me on, I just can't believe that I've been so fortunate to have the experiences that I've had. And, not all of them, a lot of them haven't been real rosy, but I'm just so grateful for the fact that I've gotten to experience it. And, to some extent, yes, it's been my decisions, but I've also just been grateful for me, from a place of faith, feeling like that I get called into these opportunities.
I know we've talked about how you got into um, uh, public service as an elected official.
Mhm.
Um, but was it that drive to, you were in the Navy, you come back home, was it that drive to continue to serve? I know you've had this you seem to, if you see a problem, want to fix it somehow. But in my mind, that's slightly different than just being of service. And did that same desire to, I want to serve in the Navy, was it that led you into running for office, or was it more, no, there's things I think I can fix?
I think it's more the latter. I mean, certainly an element of the former, but I mean, the reason I ended up running for mayor was that it started from a place of, I just didn't understand why no one was mowing the park in the that's next to my parents' neighborhood. And so I started asking questions around why had the grass grown so high. And I just, and the answers I seemed to be getting were that the city was out of money. And so they were like right on the edge of bankruptcy. at the time, I was serving at the Pentagon. And so as I was coming across these responses of that the city was out of money, I was like, what? I don't understand this. How did we get here?
Yeah.
And in the context of the work that I was doing, I was working on a stealth destroyer program for the Navy and understanding kind of contracts and budget management elements for the acquisition model that the Navy was working towards. And like, I know how we manage this at the Pentagon. In a city, like if you're like you don't have ways to defer costs and different models that we have to do through the acquisition process, like you're bouncing a check to a fireman. So what do you mean you don't have
Yeah.
money? And that led me into what became just a whole new life, quite honestly, that I just had never anticipated was going to be the trajectory that I was on. But I mean, ultimately, long story short, it came about that as I was trying to get answers to the question of like, why don't we have any money? What are we doing about this? That then I wrote a series of articles in the newspaper with what I ended up kind of discovering by just asking people questions. And as time went on and I just didn't see the kinds of changes that needed to happen to address the problem, I can still vividly remember being on the metro one evening in DC, because I was then doing defense consulting for a private consultancy firm. And I was thinking about what was going on back at home and had kept coming across the story of Nehemiah in the Old Testament, who keeps talking about like his being called home to be a part of rebuilding the community, which interestingly enough for Nehemiah, he had never been to Jerusalem, but felt compelled to then go back to be a part of rebuilding what he considered his home. And as I was sitting on the metro that evening thinking, somebody really needs to do something about this, then I had this like epiphany moment of, well, Blair, what are you going to do about it? And what do you, why are you expecting somebody else to do something when if you've got a problem with what's happening here, what are you bringing to the
Yeah.
table? And that led to a whole long discovery of then what the process was going to be for relocating back to LaPorte and giving it a go to then see if I could do something. And nobody was more surprised than I was on election night when I was like, oh, I guess we're really doing it.
For those of us that have put our name on a ballot, for friends, families, neighbors, enemies, and ne'er do wells to we're standing up to be counted. It's unless you've done it's hard to explain, and those of us that have done it understand that as nerve wracking as that is, after you win, it's like, oh, okay. oh, okay, now it's not just about, oh, I designed this really nice postcard, and oh, look at my yard sign, that's nice. And it moves very quickly from a popularity contest, which elections are in many ways, fortunately or unfortunately, it's not always understandable why certain people get elected. But for those of us that are running, that are trying to do it, that next day is quite interesting, because
Yeah.
okay, now I've got to fix this. I have a. It's not very well formulated. It's something that I've said often. It just somewhat exists in my mind, but it's the you drive past the park that has the tall grass one day, and you say, oh, that looks bad, somebody should do something about that. And then the next day, somebody really should do something about that. And then the third day, it's like you're really kind of mad that, hey, why isn't anybody doing anything about this? It's I have to leave space for, that's God telling you, is like, come on, I have been sending you in front of this problem all of the time. Now
Yeah.
it's on you to fix it.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said, I tend to think in that context that
Yeah.
if there is a need. Now there's certain things that um and maybe I'll be weighed differently when I get to heaven, is that I see an issue. I say I don't have um, the wherewithal, ability, interest. It's not my wheelhouse to fix that because I'm fixing other things. So you can't drive past every single pothole and think, well, I need to, you know, get a thing of cold patch and just go fix it myself. That's not necessarily the point, but the idea of if something is sticking in your mind that much that starts to take you down a path of you went from tall grass to funding issues to maybe I should see what's going on with this. Um, I say I got involved in politics because my backyard was flooding,
Hmm.
and it had flooded for years and years. We butt up against a commercial property that they were allowed to build up their property for a service road, and ever since then our backyards would flood. And I had a wood shed that was, after time, the bottom was just eaten out. I had it would flood so much that the motor in my lawnmower had rusted through, and it had fallen down. So, I mean, it was pretty bad. And now, to the chagrin of everyone that was on the council at the time, save one, um, didn't really care that I was running. Not didn't care for the fact that I was running, because I was pushing up. You start pushing up against, hey, you guys are in here, but you're not doing something as simple as we
Yeah.
probably shouldn't allow one neighbor to flood out another neighbor. Can we do
Yeah.
something about that? And now, to almost, I'm sure, their chagrin, they're all gone, and it's all new people, and they were doing something completely different. And so it was a weird catalyst for change in town that all started from, dude, if you guys don't like this, all you had to do is maybe put like a drain pipe in the backyard, and I would have never run. Because as much as we like doing these things, I know you enjoyed that. You enjoyed it. There's also times where it's like, you know, boy, sitting at home on a Thursday night, that'd be kind of cool too. Now, it wouldn't last but a week, and overachievers would find something to do. But for a moment, it sounds good. Um, so the story of seeing that tall grass,
Hmm.
I completely understand, and that really is. I wish more public servants came at it from that, because I know you've seen these people locally and nationally and probably internationally that are there for other reasons. They're not there to say, okay, the grass is tall and we don't have any money, but let's just fix that. We don't necessarily need to say, you did this, you voted this, Republican this, Democrat this. There's enough money, we should be able to mow the grass. And then there's folks that get in there for the wrong reasons, and I think they give the rest of us a bad name.
Well, and I think there's a blend of how, and maybe an appropriate tension of how you think about, are you running to do something, or are you running to be something? And
Yes.
I an appropriate tension, because like that quote of "Are you running to do something or to be something?" was one that Mitch Daniels had. I've heard him talk about regularly, and I think that's an important distinction to include in any calculus. And as I've chatted with people that are, tossing around the idea of running, then I'll have this discussion with them. Well, why are you doing this? Why are you feeling compelled? And what's driving you to it? And as God bless many of my veteran friends that I'll chat with that have become interested in the idea of running for Congress, and um, they'll often say that they feel like this is a way to continue their service. And I mean, that's a beautiful thing in many different kinds of ways. But then I also am like, well, but what are you hoping to accomplish in this model? And why Congress? Like, and especially like if that's the first entry point that they're looking towards, and they'll say, well,
Yes.
that's what my experience has been in, and I'm familiar from a veteran perspective and the missions that we've been a part of, all of which I'm like, I get it. And that's natural in many different kinds of ways. It's a hard entry point for like beginning this transition of military to public service, because public service has, you know, notes of military, of the values and mission set that we include in military service, but it has a whole other different function that we're asking of those servants to do, and a whole different model that it operates off of. And so I want to have a conversation with you around, like, what do you hope is going to be the impact that comes from this transition of service models. And 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 so I think those conversations are really crucial. And at the same time, I can think about a really key conversation that's another one that I'll share with friends of mine that are interested in potentially throwing their name in the hat, that was so transformative for me when I was in the discernment process for, well, Blair, what are you going to do about it? That I went and chatted with my pastor about some of this idea of running for mayor. And he very wisely had counseled me, and he's known me for a long time. So he said, you're going to make the decision that you need to make here that's right for you. But I would just offer that if you're going to run for mayor, don't just run for mayor, be the mayor. And that just changed my whole mindset about how I approached the campaign, which then changed my mindset for how I even approached that transition, because it was about the things we were going to do.
Right.
But in order to do those things, you had to be something in order to accomplish those different things. And so, I mean, that first campaign, I knocked on every door in the city, and then we hosted some different roundtable conversations to address some of the key challenges, not just mowing the park, but what I was hearing from all of the people that I talked to when I went door to door. Like the key theme that emerged from those conversations was the concern people had around substance abuse in the community. And so that began a discussion around how are we setting tables and convening all of these different partners that are addressing this, or not, in different capacities, so that people have greater awareness around what the resources are, what they can be doing, feeling some greater level of agency around this challenge. And none of that would have happened, I don't think, had my pastor not helped challenge me to say that, like, well, don't just run for mayor, be the mayor. So that then by the time election night came, I could approach it from a stance of whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And elections can be crazy things, but I feel really proud of what we've been able to do through the gift of this campaign, of being able to meet with people, to talk about different ideas, and to explore together what we could be doing that we haven't been able to do independently. And when you can have those intentions around what are we going to do, still with an eye of who do I need to be in order to accomplish these things, but be really mindful about what does that mean to be that person,
Right.
and to lean into that model. And to your point earlier, I'm not so sure that the mindset of what it means of who you're going to be for some people who are deciding to
Yeah,
get into
for some
politics these
people,
days.
and I'm always leery of folks who, having been at this process and worked with just about every level of government, from dog catcher to vice president, having been in all of those areas, I'm very cautious when someone out of the blue. Now, whether they come from whether they're a veteran and come with some service background that way, or a businessman who ran a company, um, who says, "Well, I have this executive experience, the service experience. I want to run for Congress, I always think, you know, I don't want to disparage any of my friends in Congress, although none of you are doing your job half the time, and it bothers me. I don't care what the letter after your name is. That's neither here nor there. What gets me is,
That's a separate podcast
yeah,
episode.
that's a whole separate thing there. But what gets me is, are you doing this because you want to be the congressman from the Indiana whatever, or are you doing this to change your community? Because I guarantee you can do more changing your community as a town councilor, as a city mayor,
Mhm.
as you know, even a, not all counties, like in Indiana there's 92 counties, so maybe like 88 of the 92 counties, even those county level positions can have more impact. You get into a place like Lake County that's so large, you know, and it's so large, and there's not really a township apparatus because it's so large, and but again, that's more Lake County specific. Um, if you want to serve to change things, run local. I mean, it's not extremely glamorous. You know, it's frankly, mayor is, as you know, a peak of the local you know, hierarchy as you can get. But um, beyond that, even running for you know, state rep or state senate, it's like, you know how many, you are one voice amongst dozens, which after you've figured out how to govern, that's a good place to go, because then you understand uh, building alliances, and
Mhm.
you know, using some of that grassroots knowledge to build some of these coalitions to get things done. But I think folks that just come in and say, I want to be the congressman from wherever, it's like, at that point I feel like you're just doing it to be that, have that title, you know,
Yeah.
not necessarily be that. And so I'm always, when folks say I want to do this and they've not done anything else, that doesn't mean they can't, doesn't mean they won't be effective. You know, again, this is where I'm just casting a wide net here, but I've seen that a lot, and some of them have run and you know, flooded the engine with money, and they've won, and they had varying levels of success, and you see them continue to move on in all sorts of various and current positions. So some of these folks, it's like, okay, it worked, and you know, good for you. You've got a, you know, you can put it in your family book, but the meaning of helping people is, I think that starts at the grass, the local level.
I would agree. And this is usually what
Thank you.
I
That's what this podcast is about.
and usually what I share with people when I have this discussion, in particular like friends that are veterans that are having these discussions around being interested in running for Congress. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to give you the disclaimer that I'm very much biased about this. And my opinion is one amongst many. And I will recognize that there are individuals that have not gone the path that I have, that have been very successful and impactful in the roles that they've served in. From my perspective, what I learned from my local campaign and then from my local governing experience was so valuable to me and so transformative for my understanding of how we serve community, how we serve people, how we serve constituents, that I am just going to forever be the advocate that says, if you're interested in serving, consider the local level. If you decide that's not going to be the right path for you, then fine, that's your path. But I'm going to be the one that tells you, look at what you can do in your community.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a poli sci major for undergraduate, and I focused on like foreign policy, and then I did my master's in legislative affairs, and that was more like federal domestic policy. And I had a whole mindset going into my local campaign about like what local government was going to be like, that I was so grateful to have my mind changed
Yeah.
about what local leadership and government and service does, that is another component of why I'm such an advocate for local leadership, local service first, because it was so transformative for me. And I think the other piece is like there's such a beauty in getting to live with your fellow citizens, and the stuff you're dealing with has like day-to-day impacts what on your lives, and to have the ability to see in some kind of like shorter time period the
Yeah.
fruits of your labor,
Well,
then
that and like you said, to um, to live with, live amongst,
yeah.
which sounds somewhat hoity, but the fact that you're in the same grocery store as not only the firemen who the administration before was possibly bouncing checks to, the public works folks, so the town employees, but then the town residents, the town business owners, you're amongst them every day. So if you have any ideas about what you're doing or how you're doing, they will let you know,
Oh, absolutely.
and they
They'll tell
have
you till the
zero
past
issue with that.
Sunday morning.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean so I live on a fairly busy street, and I'm a big fan of decorating for holidays, and there's not a holiday that goes by that I haven't, while I'm out there decorating, someone doesn't pull up and, hey, what's going on with this or what's going on with
Mhm.
that? And I invite it. We often joke that grocery shopping takes me twice as long as the average person because I'm also out there. I tend to put my picture on postcards, and they just I'm kind of in a town of 16,000. I'm kind of hard to miss, and so and I welcome it too. I've got some people even on my council currently that just ugh, people no, and I don't mean that necessarily. I mean I yeah, I kind of mean it that way too, but they're just not that engaging with folks.
Yeah.
And I don't mind it. I figure that's why I'm there. So, but it does it, yeah. Living with the people that you're elected to represent does make a huge difference. Than when you can escape to some far off place, make those decisions, take a month off, and then come back, and you're insulated to um, criticism in a way
Yeah.
where, boy, you vote on something at the town council last night and you need milk the next day, you might hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that
Well,
also helps. My decision making was, um, I've only made two votes on the council that I regret. Um, None of them were substantive. That changed the course of history type thing. Um, there
not with that.
was Um, but but I always figured that if if I'm okay explaining myself in the grocery store the next day, then that's fine. If it's something everybody wants, but I voted no, and I have a reason, then whether I'm up at the dais and vote no, or I'm in the bread aisle and explain why I vote no, this is what you get,
Yeah.
and you can vote harder in a few years. I don't know. That's
Yeah. Well, and I think the theme that has started to run through for me with the public service chapter of life has been trying to ask the question of like how do we live well together, and what does that look like, and like local service, local government, public service was such a gift of being able to serve in that capacity, to lead, and to help cast a vision in collaboration with the community, as we then get to have these intentional conversations around what does it mean to live well together, and what does that look like, what are our hopes for our community. And I mean, what I think I've now blended into is thinking some deeper questions around how does that work for us to live well together in an environment where particularly technology and social media are influencing so much of how
They're the
we're
worst.
responding to that question. um, I think oftentimes reacting to that question rather than intentionally responding to it. And then how do we look beyond what politics and government is meant to do, to then think more around what does it mean to live well together, and have conversations around, like, what should we be expecting government to do, politics to do, what shouldn't we be expecting it to do, what might we expect. And for me, I'm studying theology now and have this question around, like, what is the small c church's role in responding to this question around what does it mean to live well together? What is what does justice look like from a position of love? And how do we get at these core ideas that local government has been such a key part of? But I wonder to what extent we are asking all levels of government to do more than what government is really meant to do in our lives, and certainly that politics are meant to do in our lives.
I think people have a lot of times. I will preface conversations with folks when they reach out to me and say, "Now, I am not Santa Claus," and I think people expect too much from government. Um, if your house is on fire, it's a reasonable expectation that wherever you live has uh, done enough to ensure that they're the personnel, resources, technology, whatever it needs to put out that fire.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable expectation. Um, and so, uh, with schools and infrastructure, and there are some kind of baseline,
Sure.
but beyond that, um, I had a resident one time reach out several times, and they were they'll probably never listen to this. I'm trying to like weed out some identifiers. Um, uh, her and her husband, they were retired and they kept a very, very well maintained yard. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was, I think every blade of grass was individually coming. Very beautiful yard. They lived next door to a woman who had fallen on some hard times, had some medical issues. I believe um, you know, uh, the, the husband figure had passed away, and so had some mobility issues and didn't have a huge support network, and so their yard then you know just never looked that good. Um, and the call was constantly, hey, you guys need to do something about this. You guys need to do something about this. And eventually I said, knowing these people, had gone to, one of the bigger churches, I said, have you, I said, we can do what we can do, but all we're going to do is we can go and we can, slap a ticket on the door, or we can go mow it and then send them a bill. I said, but I don't know that that's really going to fix the problem. I said, you're a part of a very large community at church. Do you, have you thought about maybe asking around and seeing if there's some volunteers that might be able to help? And that was a totally foreign concept that you're all neighbors.
Right.
Your neighbor fell in some really difficult times. Maybe while you're out there mowing you mow theirs too. I mean, there was no fences. You just it's just make a slightly longer line, and um and that always sticks with me as some folks who have an unrealistic expectation of what government should do. Could government do that? Absolutely. Government could go in, mow the grass, send a bill, put a lien on the house, do all sorts of things. But it's like, you know, yeah, we could, but should we? And is that what you want?
Right.
And I don't know. And But again, you have folks that are on uh, social media and the news. I don't really watch the news anymore unless it's a I see it's a major event. I'll turn on very briefly just to because they just repeat the same thing every 38 seconds. So I catch it and I turn off and I'm done. I find news is best after it's been marinating for like 48 hours. Then you start to get a little more accuracy on it. Um, but yeah, the question of what is the government for? What's the purpose of that? Um, Not only do elected officials sometimes forget, which is dangerous, but
Yeah.
then the electorate that they don't know what they want.
Well, and I think this is where my more libertarian leanings start to emerge, that I look to some of our founding documents and values where we talk about government's role in securing rights. And I think about like what that looks like. And I part of what I've loved about my studies over the last year have been discussing this question of like, how do we understand both positive and negative freedoms? Of like, we have the freedom for different kinds of things, but we also have freedom from different aspects.
Yeah,
And how do we understand what what government's job is in securing those rights of being free for different kinds of opportunities, and also being free from these different impositions on our lives. And what do we expect of government? What do we expect of a moral system for influencing those different kinds of questions? All going back to this idea of like, how do we live well with one another and acknowledge the different experiences, talents, callings, and faith traditions, then, and just aspects of life that are such a beautiful thing of the uniqueness of every human being, and the tapestry that we all provide. And I've loved having the opportunity to dig into like what Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about as this idea of the church and Jesus emerging in how we interact with one another, and having the questions of how we respond to the situations, the unique situations of one another's lives and personalities, be the opportunity for where Jesus emerges from those interactions. And that I've loved having these conversations with my classmates around, like, there's such a actually beautiful opportunity that can emerge when you have a difference of opinion, and to some extent a disagreement with someone, to then work through it and to come out on the other side of it learning something from it, and adjusting your insight as a result of it, and maybe adjusting your reactions, behavior, actions going forward, because you learned something that you yourself couldn't have known without that other human being that has now brought something different to your life, and a different awareness and understanding. And that in those kinds of interactions, that we have this opportunity as a church to then, and again I say small c church, to then think about how we're having Jesus come through in those kinds of experiences. And that's been one of a million different lessons that I've gotten to have over the last year, of like, I never thought about it that way. And can I approach situations where I'm uncomfortable and where I disagree with someone from a position of, actually, this is an opportunity for me to learn more of who Jesus is in my life through this other person. And that's just a piece of how all of the faith tradition that I have works, and it's been beautiful to be able to see those results. The experience along the way isn't entirely comfortable, and I've had some tough moments with people who are
Yeah.
dear friends, but who have become dearer friends as a result of it.
Now you've spoken a lot about. You said you're studying theology now.
Mhm.
Uh, we we we're starting to get into faith a little bit here. Um, and this perfect dovetail into the next conversation is, where are you at right? I mean, I know where you're at right now, but where are you at? What are you doing? Was it maybe last October? I think it was last
Mhm.
October, maybe a year that since you left us and abandoned us. Um, but where'd you go and what are you doing?
Well, in the grand tradition of what has been an adventure throughout life, did not have this on my bingo card that I get to be able to do. But I am in Oxford, and I am studying at Oxford University through a place called Wycliffe Hall, and studying theology. What I thought was going to be a 1 year program, where I would have the opportunity to use some GI Bill benefits that I am fortunate to take advantage of, to then spend a year studying theology, has turned into at least another year of then
Well,
digging.
I admittedly I was surprised that you were still there. I
Yeah,
thought, man, I thought you were coming home.
I did too. That was the plan. And as I've found in multiple times in life, well, there was maybe a little different plan
Yeah.
than I at the time. And it stems for me originally that I'm a huge C.S. Lewis fangirl, and
Mm-hmm.
growing fangirl of Tolkien and the Inklings, and that led me to Oxford.
Rohan,
There
right
we
up
are.
there.
Yeah. Well, you'll appreciate that in a week and a half or so, I'm going to be on a panel discussing the rise of fantasy fiction and what's contributing towards it. So, all of these things
So
are
yeah,
tied.
sign me up. It's like half of my tattoos, and I'm not going to adjust the camera. Half and half of the paraphernalia. I think it's a wonderful word. And just speaking of that, I hate to interrupt your train of thought, but as you were talking about Oxford and all these things, the only thing that went through my head is, so what are you, like a Gryffindor now or something? But that's seriously, just ignore me.
There are all of those things here, and I am convinced that there are portals across this city that you can time travel. And I think that I have like come close to some of them, but I haven't found them just yet. And this is going to take us
You're
to weird
you're getting
rip.
there. Now,
But
while you're out there doing faith-based
yeah,
things, there is now I don't know. I have zero concept of space in the United Kingdom. So I
okay,
may be asking you something that is like, hey, if you've got an hour, drive from LaPorte to Terre Haute. And it's like, well, Bob, it doesn't really work like that.
yeah,
But there is a church somewhere in the UK. I think it's down in the southern half somewhere. St. Matthew's Church in Stretton.
okay,
If you get a chance, I'll send you the stuff. Family genealogy was big with us. You can look it up on the Google webs. St. Matthew's Church, Stretton, Stretton or En. I think On or En, Stretton. Um, the This was back in, I want to say, the 1600s. The church belonged to the Starkeys.
okay,
And at some point in the late 1600s, um, the Starkey family had a slight disagreement with the Church of England. And
okay,
so the Starkeys, we hopped on some boats, like a lot of people in England in the late 1600s who had disagreements with the Church of England, and they boated over to the New World. Um, and so, but I now follow this church. It was in disrepair for a couple hundred years. It's now, um, I as much as social media will tell me it's thriving, I follow them now,
Yeah.
but my understanding is that part of the original building is still there. And one day I would love to go there to see that as some type of great Starkey homecoming. Um, so I don't know if you're
Yeah.
bored and you look on Google Maps and see if it's a 10-minute drive, swing by, take a picture for me. I'd appreciate
All right.
it. But if it's hours, I don't know. But that is my singular Starkey Church UK
Very cool.
story.
Well, the last year of study, and I still work with the Sagamore Institute, running the prize for the Goldsmith Prize for Innovation in Local Government. So I'm grateful to be able to maintain an Indiana presence while studying full time. I have also learned that's just about taken me to my breaking points. That trying to get essays done in the midst of all of these different things has been an interesting education and where my limits are. But the learning style here has just been fascinating, and it's hard, but it's a good kind of hard that really, I think, has been such a benefit for me to really dig into what I believe and be forced into writing that, communicating that, and developing a different skill set of being able to communicate in a certain type of writing and speaking style. And to your point about some of the history, I mean, Oxford is just this incredible, almost like center point in many aspects of the arc of Western civilization, that so much of Western civilization history has some tie to this city that really stems from a lot of the excuse me, elements where Oxford was originally founded as the place for training ground for religious leaders. And so all of the different schools that make up the University of Oxford have originally formed from different monastic houses that then were contributing towards the development of different religious leaders. And so the Reformation has just incredible elements that have played out here. And just yesterday, I was taking one of the new students for Wycliffe Hall on a tour of the city, which feels super surreal to be now that person. I'm like, here, let me show you around, rather than being the one being shown around. But I was showing her the spot on one of my favorite places in the city on Broad Street, where Thomas Cranmer, who was one of three of the martyrs during the Reformation. Well, there were multiple martyrs, but there were three big ones in 1555. Then in 1556, Thomas Cranmer was martyred in this spot where there's still an X on the street. You can stand right next to it, and it's a place where the city ditch existed in 55 and 56, where Nicholas Ridley and Hugh Latimer were the two in 55. 56 was Cranmer, and they were burnt at the stake as a part of Queen Mary, also known as Bloody Mary, transitioning the church within England back to Catholicism after Henry VIII had changed the church from Catholicism into bringing about the Church of England, what would become the Church of England, and Protestantism. That wasn't the entire reason of the Reformation, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a key element of it. And to have these places that many of these schools started in like the 1000s, one started in like 1038, some of them are 1100s, 1200s, and they're still here. There's still elements of them. You can walk right past this place where Bishop Ridley, Latimer, and Cranmer were burnt at the stake as a part of transitioning the church. And there were so many things that have taken place that, to the extent that our lives feel so tumultuous because of what's happening around us in the news and so many different things, and it's understandable. There is a lot of tumult that happens around us, but I've found just an incredible perspective that comes with being in a place that the arc of human history
Right.
is on display, that you literally can walk right past it and have that inform you on a daily basis of like, humanity has gone through a lot of things, and
It
we
does.
and so, what's my role in it today, and what do I have control over, what can I influence, and just do the best that I can today in recognition of kind of a broader scope of things, which, boy, do I feel like that conversation is not happening in most of the mediums that social
No, no,
create.
it's not something that um when I hear things, every time something big happens, it's the most important election of our lifetimes. Oh, this is a turning point in, the conversation, or whatever the buzzwords, whatever the corporate words are to make you feel like this here now is the biggest, most explosive moment ever. A thought or something that I've been chewing on for a while is I often wonder when you see the state of politics, the state of the U.S., everything that's going on, the you know Trump and Orange Mad Bad and Sleepy Joe Biden and all these people, and that's the worst ever, and we're going to go in and grab these people, and you can say this, you can't say this, if you say this, all like it, but then and all that, it's the worst it's ever been. I think I I wonder what it was like for patriots in the colonies
Mm,
in, say, 1750,
yeah.
where you are still, 20 years away from real in-depth revolution and change. But that also, the taxation without representation, the feelings of independence, and whether or not you were loyal to the crown, or if you were, that didn't happen overnight. So there was a growth of that. So sometimes when I think of, with the, and I don't say this to tag anything. I hate when podcasts and people do that. But um, when Charlie Kirk was shot, boy, it really seemed to change um, some conservative thinking, some Republican, some conservative thinking in terms of, well, we have to do this stuff because you can't argue with the enemy and all these other things, and that's big, that's intense now, and I still can't help but think, um, maybe this is just decades before something. There's a before time, and like I said,
Hmm.
it's something that I've been chewing on. It's not very well formulated, but I often wonder how how much are we just living 20 years before something?
Yeah.
Um, you know, World War One. Okay. You know, the world was a mess before that. So what was it like in 1897? Just a couple decades before, and um, so to have those reminders, so to speak to you, is to have those reminders of when you're walking past these things. They weren't burned at the stake overnight. The Reformation didn't happen overnight. Um, you said, there's a lot to talk about that. We could probably have a 3-hour podcast on just the Reformation. You and so history is something where we look back and there's a benefit of time. It's you open a book and it starts on this page and ends on this page. It's just the middle, and then you flip to the next horrible, tragic thing in history, and but there's often years and decades in between those things. And
Hmm.
so you can lose some perspective on, oh no, these are real things that happened, not just something that you have read in a book.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't really have that here. Deep historical things, especially once you get in the interior, past the original colonies. Um, even the Civil War battlefields that you can go to and find some type of remembrance on something. Those are all out east. There's just not a lot. Everything is new and fresh here, which means everything else feels old and it couldn't possibly happen.
Well, it's fascinating seeing the difference when Americans talk about something we consider old versus a European perspective of what they consider old.
Right.
That's world of difference. How that's felt culturally.
Yeah, the first time I came back from, we spent 21, 22 days the first time I went to Europe. I came back, and it was so interesting because it would be, oh, this church here was constructed in
Yeah.
1215 and blah, 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 blah. And I'd be coming home from O'Hare, driving down 8094, and it's like, and the McDonald's on your left was
Yeah.
built in
Yeah.
1971. I mean, that was like the most grand thing that the Borman had to offer, and so yeah, there is something.
Yeah.
Time means something
Well, and
different
unfortunately, as always happens
there
with
than
our
it does here.
conversations, then we could go on for hours. But I'm going to have a hard stop in a couple of minutes here. But I wanted to just think, I mean, I think there's on this theme of time and how it's felt in different ways. I think there's just such a benefit of being able to have some of that broader perspective, like we're just talking about, of like centuries that we're thinking about when we're talking historic types of impacts. On the flip side of that, I mean, there are things that I come across here and I'm like, I mean, we fought the right war in 1776. like, like
Yeah, yes. I absolutely agree with that. You have a hard time with you, so I've got
okay,
a few questions that I want to get through. 10
okay.
questions. We'll do rapid fire. I don't want church answers. I mean, if it's a churchy answer, that's fine too, but they'll be quick. Bernard Provoked questions, 1960s, I think. I liked them because they're somewhat humanizing. We can talk about politics all day long, but this gives us an insight into Blair. So, what's your favorite word?
Imagination.
Oh, good one.
Not
What is
going to
your
say
least
it.
favorite word?
I'm not gonna. There's a reason why it's my least favorite word. I'm not going to say it out loud if I don't have to. Pass. No,
Blair. Pass. Pass
it's
is
not, but
your
that's
least
what
favorite
I'm
word. Okay.
going to respond.
If I had a graphic that said
I
disappointed over here, that's what I would do.
fair.
Okay. Well, you barely get a pass on that. The next time you're on, we're going to talk about your least favorite word. What is, without being incriminating, and it doesn't have to be anything nefarious, I say mine is convenience. What is your favorite drug?
Sugar.
I'll do it. If you were reincarnated and could be anything else, what would you be?
I was just having this conversation with somebody this weekend, and I think I've changed my mind over it. But prior to me changing my mind, I had literally said, if reincarnation was a thing, I'm fascinated with the idea of being able to be a Sherpa in Nepal, of like being able to be so in tune
Hmm.
with your surroundings and to be so knowledgeable of the way that creation and weather patterns operate around you, that you are your life is so dependent upon it, and then it influences like your culture, influences everything about your lifestyle, and you can then be this like super chill person to be able to work with crazy tourists that then decide that they want to climb Mount Everest, and you can just kind of navigate all this. I think it'd be fascinating to be a Sherpa. Now, I was chatting with somebody who went to base
Okay.
camp, and after listening to all of that, I don't know. It sounds pretty tough, but it's cool.
Nope. I'm good. I am good here, a
Yeah.
couple 100 feet above sea level. That's I'm doing okay. Doing okay. What noise or sound do you hate?
People chewing.
Oh my God, that is like half of the people. Um, I absolutely agree. If you get a chance, I ended up putting a bonus episode of this out. It's just a short one, like 20 minutes, where I go through these questions and talk about why I like them and stuff. But that's certainly the answer to one. I don't eat with my family. We have a kitchen and the dining room all kind of combined. So it'll be a family out there. My sister, my brother-in-law. I've brought the and I'll stand on the kitchen side and eat because I can't stand the sound of mashing and gnawing and slurping. Ugh. Nope, nope,
Oh,
nope. I
goodness.
will kick a puppy. Yeah, I know. It's such a reaction.
I think it balances out
Okay.
if you're eating so that then like you're just hearing your chewing, for me at least. Yeah.
Oh, for you. You are a better person than I. What noise or sound do you love?
Water trickling through in a river.
A lot of people tend to like water type sounds, whether it's waves in an ocean, the babbling brook,
Yeah.
or any of those. There's something relaxing about that. What is your favorite curse word?
I don't know. I this isn't even a curse word, and it sort of feels satisfying when you say it. A blast. I had to work pretty hard when I got out of the Navy to change my vocabulary because I realized
I
abruptly
would
that the
imagine.
rest of the world did not speak the way that we did on the ship that I was on. And we
They
really
didn't
did.
speak like
And
sailors.
I remember being at a stoplight and
Yeah.
like just very nonchalantly, because I just didn't even notice it. I dropped a couple of F bombs and my mom was in the car with me and was just horrified. And that was when I realized, like, oh, wow, I did not realize how much my language has changed. I better do something about this.
When when I first started doing radio, I don't know, 6 months ago, because I have a terrible. I we don't teach Liam these are bad words. We just say they're
Yeah.
adult words because that's something that stuck with me. Um, but I had some good advice that said pretend you're on the phone with your grandma. You're not going to go drop f bombs with grandma on the phone. You're just going to have a nice conversation. So I try to do that, but man, sometimes I'm surprised more don't slip out. I've got three last questions. Two of them are pretty quick. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? And uh, a Sherpa at base camp not being one of them.
I'll give an honest answer and TBD whether it ever comes about, but I would say writing.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you not like to
Anything
attempt?
that requires large amounts of maths. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the maths. Oh, look at you over there in the UK for a
Yeah.
year, and you're like, oh, the maths.
They did it in,
We're in the maths. Yeah.
yeah.
Gonna go to the
And so that's
proms.
why
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly
Well done,
gates?
my good and faithful servant.
I suppose that's the allowable church answer. Blair Milo, thank you so much for taking an hour and a half out of your busy day in the UK. I don't know. It's with the time change. It's got to be like midnight in November there. I don't know what it is, but thank you for taking time. And the miracle of technology that we can be half a world away and talk about tall grass in a LaPorte Park, theology, and your least favorite word.
Absolutely. So
So,
great to catch up for a
so
little
cheers
bit,
to
and thank you
technology.
for you to join and share.
Oh, I know. I will send you the church, and you just tell me if it's anywhere nearby, and your response to me is going to be your least favorite
Okay.
word.
I'll because if I can
All right.
type it, that means I don't have to hear it out loud, and I just hear it.
That's your way of, I'm not putting it in the universe,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
contained to the interwebs. Okay,
All
fair
right.
enough. Fair enough. Blair Milo, thanks for joining me, and I
Thank
will
you.
see everybody later.